Unit 12 is the heart and cardiovascular system. So we're going to take a look at the heart, its anatomy and physiology, but we're also going to look at blood vessels, arteries and veins and capillaries, and look at their anatomy and physiology here within this unit as well. Let's start by describing the location of the heart. In this course, we've already looked at the cavities that make up the body. The heart lies within the thoracic cavity, but then the thoracic cavity, as shown here, has the pleural cavity, where you find the lungs, as well as the mediastinum, which is between each of the lungs. The heart lies within the mediastinum, basically within the middle of the chest. It's surrounded by the pericardium, which we'll look at later in this unit. And the apex of the heart, the point of the heart, points laterally and inferiorly. The blood vessels, the arteries and veins that enter and exit the heart can be seen in the image here as well. So let's take a look and describe the three layers of the heart wall. If we were to take a cross-section of the heart wall here, we would see this. The heart wall is made up of three layers. The first is the pericardium, as shown in the earlier image. To break down the term pericardium, peri is referring to perimeter, and cardium is referring to heart. So this layer lies around the perimeter outside of the heart. The fibrous layer is, as the name implies, a fibrous tissue that is the outermost portion of the pericardium. The parietal pericardium lies just beneath that. The outer layer of the heart, the epicardium, is also the same as the visceral pericardium. Visceral is referring to organ, and so the organ layer of the pericardium is also the epicardium. Between the visceral pericardium and the parietal pericardium, there is the pericardial space, which is a cavity that will be filled with fluid, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. The myocardium is the muscle layer. Myo means muscle, and cardium referring to heart. In the unit on tissues, we've taken a look at cardiac muscle, and this is where you find the cardiac muscle within the myocardium. When we went through the muscle portion of the tissues unit, we looked at cardiac muscle and described it as having striations because of the proteins that make up the cardiac muscle, the myosin and the actin, that the muscle cells are branched, and between the muscle cells we have tight junctions. The tight junctions allow for a connection between the cells that allows the contraction signal to move from one muscle cell into the next. Finally, on the inside layer of the heart, the third layer is the endocardium. The endo meaning inside, and the cardium referring again to the heart. So now let's take a closer look at the pericardium and talk about its functions. We'll move that image off to the side and take a look at where the heart is found. Again, we've looked at this image a little bit earlier. The heart is found in the mediastinum within the thoracic cavity, but it's lying right between the lungs. And we can see around the lung, there's a protective layer just like there is around the heart, the pericardium. Around the lungs, this is called the pleura, also made up of a parietal layer and a visceral layer, but we'll take a closer look at that when we get to the respiratory system. But I mention it because we should note that the lungs are covered by protective membrane, and the heart is surrounded by this pericardium that acts again as a protective membrane. Because inside our thoracic cavity, as we breathe, our lungs change size. Our heart, as it beats, also contracts and expands, and so it's constantly changing size. The reason for the pericardium is that it provides protection for the heart as it beats, so that the heart, getting smaller and bigger, is not rubbing up against the lungs, damaging both the lungs and the heart itself. And as we breathe and our lungs change in size, they're not rubbing up against the heart, causing damage to the heart and the lungs themselves. So we mentioned earlier that there's the parietal pericardium and the visceral pericardium with the pericardial space between them. Within that space, there is actually serous fluid. The reason there's serous fluid within that is because as the heart beats, the visceral pericardium will rub up against the parietal pericardium, but the serous fluid acts as an oil or a lubricant that allows for the two layers to rub up against each other without causing damage. Furthermore, the pleura has a similar structure, and there's fluid between the two pleural layers, so that as the heart beats and the lungs expand, This serous fluid acts as a lubrication, allowing these layers to easily slide over each other and reducing the friction.